Hello, Christ Lutheran Church. Whoa, we are in the monitors, or we are in the mains. Can you take us out of the mains? That's really loud. Oh, okay, then leave it. We'll go with it. Hello, Christ Lutheran Church. As you know, I'm Pastor Kent. To my right are Dick Halopsuk. That looks like Viking colors. And a Twins mask.
Go Vikings, go Twins.
Oh boy, you gotta use the microphone for them to hear you.
Go Vikings, go Twins.
There you go. Richard, he has no team spirit. He's gray. I don't know what that means. Hello, Richard. He's not even going to comment. Well, Christ Lutheran Church, I want to recognize a couple things. We had our first listening session on Sunday. To just share with you, at that listening session, I spoke about and opened with a sense of call. How are we called? What are we called to? What are we called from? And how do we just consider what God is calling us into? Sue Witt shared about the Family Promise program and passionately about her involvement over the official 12 years, it seems like. We've narrowed it down to 12 years. Sounds like conversations may have started all the way back 14 years ago. And then Mark Bachagaluko talked about his sense of support for the program as well. They also serve on the committee but are not here tonight. But we do have Richard and Dick. A number of questions that were in Sunday's listening session. I have in hand all of them from Sunday's session. Just off camera here will be Deb, and she'll be taking any questions, comments in the chat for us. Two things have transpired that we just want to be open about since Sunday. David Fry from Family Promise was able to listen in to, I'm not sure if he was live or if he was listening to our recording, but he said, Pastor Kent, great meeting, but I just wanted to share a couple thoughts. And David Fry is the director of Family Promise. He said, first, Sue Witt was right, Richard. We didn't have it right, but Sue Witt had it right. We average about 75% success rate in the Family Promise program. And in that 75%, we include people we ask to leave the program or who leave on their own without housing. So 75% is the success rate. That was one of the questions lifted up on Sunday. That's just an example of we are going to continue to collate all your questions, put them together in a frequently asked questions document, and send that out in a mailing to the entire congregation, and considering that we suspect some will not have heard everything on Sunday, some will not have heard everything tonight here on Wednesday. The other correction that David gave us is that Coon Rapids didn't say no to all the sites, just to the Faith Lutheran Church site. But they did suggest that the Peace Lutheran site had a lot of heavy lifting of being on the public spot on University that the piece of land that Peace has that was considering. So he said, I don't think the Peace Lutheran Church site is an impossible site, but it has the same similar zoning problems we see here in the city of Blaine, here at the Christ Lutheran site. But Family Promise was clear to say that the Christ Lutheran site would also get us a lot closer, which was one of the goals to be next to the Human Resources building on 89th. Since many of the guests do not have transportation, they can just walk down for part of the program. They have to be at program meetings and things at the Human Resources building. So from a standpoint of a group of families and guests that cannot readily get transportation, this is ideal because they can walk the 2 blocks versus having to take public transportation. But the second thing that David lifted up is the ongoing partnership already in place with Christ Lutheran Church also makes it a much more appealing opportunity to more deeply partner with Family Promise and Christ Lutheran Church. So I share that as an update from that. We have had both those who support and those who do not support weigh in. One comment on Monday from people that I received was that I didn't know that I could put in chat a positive comment to share with the congregation. Yes, I think, Dick, you said it well. Maybe you could, Richard, you said it well. Maybe you could say what you said about Sunday.
Somehow, we didn't get unmuted in Zoom, so nobody's heard anything of what you said.
Are we unmuted now? Chance just came running up and says, "You have been staring at us blankly, not hearing anything." Wow, I don't even know where to start. At the beginning. Wow. Okay, welcome Christ Lutheran Church. I thought I was unmuted, but apparently I wasn't. Maybe you're happy not to hear me. But here we go again. Sunday we had our first listening session. Tonight is the second listening session. We will take all your comments from Sunday and tonight, develop it into a frequently asked questions document, and if we can get further detail to questions that you lift up, we will do our best to do so. Also, I would share that Sue Witt spoke about the program on Sunday and her involvement over the 12 years. Mark Bacigalupo spoke about his more recent involvement but support throughout the years for deepening our relationship with Family Promise and serving our community. Richard and Dick are here tonight, so we were talking about his wonderful Vikings colored shirt and Twins mask.
Yeah, what do you think of the nice Vikings colors here? So go Vikings, and my mask, go Twins.
And we noted that Richard doesn't have anything but gray on. Yeah, he's speechless. He's got nothing. The second time around, he's speechless, Dick. So I was trying to say that we've had many, many comments and questions. I want to share with you from David Fry, the director of Family Promise, two things. And the first is he said Sue Witt on Sunday was correct. We average a 75% success rate. And in that 75% rate, it includes people who we ask to leave and who leave on their own without housing. So 75% is a very high success rate for a nonprofit program such as this. Coon Rapids didn't say no to all the sites. I had thought that was the information that I had, but they did say no to the Faith Lutheran site. The Peace Lutheran site seems to have greater challenges than the Christ Lutheran site. They both have zoning challenges and partnership challenges. So we recognize those challenges, and we are looking to figure out how we can identify those challenges and where we can make it possible or not. We don't know what will happen at the end of zoning and all that. But he would say that the two things that make Christ Lutheran Church ideal are our location on 89th near the Human Resources Building. Many of the families do not have transportation and will need to go to daily meetings at the Human Resources Building. So transportation has been problematic at best for their program to make all those meetings for their families. So Christ Lutheran is more ideal than Peace Lutheran of trying to get families on buses to get down here versus walking the 2 blocks to the Human Resources Center. And then he would also add that the ongoing partnership already in place at Christ Lutheran made it more appealing for for Family Promise. So we will take all your questions into consideration in trying to put together a frequently asked questions document. And then that will go out to the congregation. We are aware that there's not 100% yay or 100% no way for this project of deepening relationship with Family Promise. The start now is a rezoning question. We'll talk again about that tonight. What is before us is to begin the process to consider rezoning. If we don't get rezoned, then the project would fail at that time. So what is at stake tonight is that we have questions. Please ask them. But on Monday, we received word that we would like, someone said, I thought I couldn't put a positive comment on the chat. It seemed like you were only asking for questions. Richard and Dick and I just talked before coming on live, and we want to hear all your feelings. We want to hear all your comments, questions, concerns, suggestions, positive, negative. We know that there is never going to be 100% agreement on this, but we are here to listen. That's what a listening session is. We are here to listen. We know that some of you have reached out to committee members for both the positive comments and for the negative comments for the project. We appreciate all comments. Yes?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's why we're here tonight. Deb is off here to the left of the screen on the chat that says Christ Lutheran Church. She'll be able to write down the questions like we did on Sunday, and she'll hand them over to me. And you'll see that we'll collect them up like we did on Sunday's questions, so we have all of them, and we'll do our best to answer them. So if you have a comment, a question, please put it in chat at this time. We invite you to do so, and we'll start there. So as soon as Deb sees something, we'll hear about it and get it going. Maybe, Richard, do you have any reflections since Sunday that you would share with the group as they're typing?
Well, I did appreciate all the questions that were raised. I think they helped to further understand this project and how it could be done. And as Pastor Kent said, we really want to hear anything that you have to say, because I think that will help all of us discern how we want to vote on this project eventually in September.
Dick, how about you?
I think it would be good to take the comments that we have concerns about the program and help to put together maybe more information. I think having a little more information on some of these specific concerns would be good to have for the congregation also.
Is there any in specific that you wanted maybe Richard or I to help answer? I know you've received a few calls.
Well, I got a little list here in front of me, and these are the most common things that I hear, that people are very concerned about the preschool. No matter where it is on the site, does it have a potential to harm the preschool? Most everybody feels really strongly that preschool is a really wonderful thing. We wouldn't want to do anything at all that would harm that preschool. Also, when we talked on Sunday, I think I talked about the fact that if the Family Promise program ends after 5 years or something, and they no longer want to be in the building goes back to us. I mean, it's going to be our building from the start. We will own the building as it's being built, and if Family Promise goes away, it's our building. We will pay all the expenses. Up until the point that they would leave, they pay all the maintenance, insurance, etc. For it. So that's a concern. So maybe we can make that as clear as possible. And then harming the membership of the congregation, and I think that will be resolved by the vote if that's a strong concern among a lot of people. And then the other one that I hear a lot is not in front of my building, not in front of my church, my beautiful church. This is a very nice church, but I think maybe we could answer that more completely with a discussion amongst us and the rest of the task force.
Yeah, I think those are all great questions. I know we tackled a bunch of those on Sunday, but there's probably new people on tonight. Lori and Frank, Right, can we hear some of the questions that came out Sunday? Some of those are the questions that came out Sunday. One of the questions that I'll tackle in your group was the preschool question. You know, in the 4 years that I've been here, the preschool has gone through a number of iterations, and it continues to go through an iteration here under COVID-19. The Board of Health, I'm going to get it wrong because I've spent 3 months in it. There's MDH, CDC, and Board of Health all do not have the same protocols. So you are trying to manage all three of those protocols, which made it very hard for us to reopen in July. I am so thankful for our preschool staff. I'm amazed at their flexibility. And if you have to wear a mask for 6 straight hours while trying to herd toddlers, I want to hug all of them and thank them for the tremendous efforts that they are doing in order that we can have an open preschool. I will also say that Tim Devaney has been very helpful and used other members and council members with gifts in accounting and business acumen to look at the costs. The cost to open has almost, I think, increased 40 to 50%. And by looking closely at all the ways in which the center spends money, we have been able to hold fall tuition rate increase to 20%. But at the same time as increasing the rate 20%, the capacity of the center has been greatly diminished. A classroom, Dick, that used to have 22 human beings in it can only have 10. So where there would have been 2 adults and 20 preschoolers, we can only have 10 humans. That means 1 adult and 9 children. That's a big obstacle to get around. When you start thinking about the student ratio, the adult student ratio for toddlers, it becomes 1 to 7. So you can only have 8 humans in that area, which would have had, again, 14 students and 2 adults in that same space. So that we were able to hold the tuition rate to a 20% increase means that we as a ministry, Christ Lutheran Church, will not most likely in this COVID environment receive any benefit fiscally to the bottom line of Christ Lutheran Church. So that's an important thing for all of us to know.
Okay, so you're saying that when there are more students, there's enough income that the church itself benefits. They pay all their expenses, and then there's...
Well, I think that's an ongoing question. You were here when we built the addition. So I would say that the addition that is the preschool is about X amount of the remodeling. When I think about the gymnasium and the new kitchen, I think that's about 50% of the remodel, and I think of the learning center as about 50% of the remodel. What I would say, it's all one church and one ministry. Christ Lutheran Church took out a massive loan, and Christ Lutheran Church has yet to pay that loan off. So the idea that the Learning Center has to pay their share, I think there's a myth out there that there's some great revenue source. In the 4 years that I've been here, we have tried to raise the monthly rate of revenue from the Learning Center over to the church's budget. The best we did was $36,000 a year. $36,000 in a fiscal year. If you look at our annual budget our mortgage and principal payments, I'm going off memory, but I know at one point when I got here, it was at around $340,000 annually. I think it is down because we did a refinance to around $300,000 to $320,000 a year. But if you think that 50% of that mortgage liability every year was the building of the learning center, that's $150,000, and the greatest amount of revenue we have seen from the learning center is $36,000 since I've been here. It is not a cash windfall. It absolutely 100% is a ministry of Christ Lutheran Church that we are committed to because we know the value in the community and we know how families have joined Christ Lutheran Church through it, and families that don't still hear about Jesus every week in chapel, every day when their teacher prays with them.
Well, I think I've also heard that there's a lot more to the preschool than money. There's some significant work going on there with the children, and there is some significant camaraderie with the teachers and their relationship with this church. So there's a lot more going on there than just money. I think the background concern there might be what I call those people concerned, that the people who are going to be in the Family Promise program are problem people. And I know that there is a very extensive screening process that David Fry has told us about and written about. And so maybe we try to get a little more information from him and explain just how that all works. And that might be a help.
I think Richard's probably a great theologian on this one too, about anytime we other. Maybe you want to field this.
Well, there is an extensive screening process in terms of how people get into the program. The program is essentially 90 days long. There are people who choose not to get into the program because they don't want to adhere to all the rules and protocols that Family Promise has. And there are people who eventually may be asked to leave because they're not living up to those requirements. I think we ought to step back and think about the clients in this program. These clients are not very dissimilar to many of us. They are people who live from paycheck to paycheck. They now suffered some kind of crisis in their life. It may be loss of job. It may be a medical emergency. It may be a major car repair. And now these folks are facing the question, do I feed my kids or do I pay my rent? So people coming into this program are not dissimilar from you or I or other people that belong to this congregation. So I think we need to be careful of how we assess the clients here.
Very good.
Great. Mish brings up this question. If Family Promise does leave our site and we take the building back, what would we do with this type of structure once vacated? Great question.
I know. We will make it a storage building. Just kidding.
Maybe that's an inside joke because Dick and I have been, for about 2 years, walking through the closets and sometimes big rooms that feel like closets. I remember taking Shannon Jensen on a tour of the campus about 3 years ago as we considered Christ Lutheran Mission Appeal Fund for the 60th anniversary. And you were part of that when she goes, I'll only be part of this if you declutter, Pastor Kent. Mark Staum has been an amazing help in decluttering Christ Lutheran Church. So that comes back to this storage thing. We don't want too much building. And I think that becomes part of the discernment process of the task force dream team that would, if we can rezone, then your goal is not to have more building than's feasible.
Right, and I think that, I've met some of the Family Promise board, and these are innovative people. I think if the program that they're proposing to put in this building to start with doesn't work, they will probably already have a plan B going there. These people they know what's going on nationally with this issue and how it's being dealt with and how those programs are great or mediocre or failures. So they're going to know a lot about this. This problem that they are trying to deal with is a pretty common problem in Blaine, Coon Rapids, and Anoka. And the cities are saying it's just increasing. And so when they hear about things like this kind of a program, they applaud these kind of efforts.
Thank you, Dick. Sorry, Richard.
I would just add to that first of all, I think we need to acknowledge the point she's raised is a risk, and we should say that. But the homeless problem is not going away. It is going to continually be here and probably increasing. So if Family Promise were to fade away for some reason, I think there would be other programs following behind it because the problem is still there. And now we have a resource that can be used to address it.
Great. You might notice in the chat, if you're looking, Tim Devaney has corrected Richard and I. The mortgage refinance is now annually at $740,000. So it is now under $300,000. So that's fantastic news because I think when you were council president, it was over $300,000. Richard's iPad. Richard asks, I think the question regarding the effect on the preschool with the potential of Family Promise is that there is a preschool sense that children may not be safe and parents would decide not to use the preschool. I perceived, but yes, that is a potential idea. I think right now what we are facing is more of a fiscal. If I can go next door and it's cheaper, I will go there. That seems to be what drives some to registration. But I also have seen within our preschool families that surround families that are hurting. When families learn of a family in our preschool that is going through a rough patch, I am enamored by the way in which they surround them in just beautiful ways. They have done diaper drives. They have done food, to the homes. They have petitioned Christ Lutheran Church on behalf of a family that hasn't even asked to consider a scholarship for a family because they know the family needs a scholarship, but the family themselves hasn't even asked for it. So I have found the preschool to find a way to be church and find a way to make room in the program. So I think the other thing that I would lift up is Dick is aware of this concern, and design would reflect that concern.
Right. We need to be involved in the design of the building, and we certainly will.
Eileen Nicholas, I might be late to the game because your question says, isn't that something the zoning would entail? I think you're asking about specifics. A zoning change only, correct me, Dick, my understanding of a zoning change is that you zone the use of property, not the design and implementation. And so if we understand this correct, is that we are right now only voting on a zoning change in order that we could develop a plan, but there is no plan right now.
That's right. The zoning change would affect the entire city of Blaine. So if this type of use is requested in another residential area attached to a church, the city of Blaine would technically allow it. However, even the projects that are allowed with the proper zoning without the change are all heavily reviewed. There's a lot of requirements to do a building in the city of Blaine that have to be met by engineering, planning, and the building inspection department. None of this is easy. Any building that's going to be built in this city is going to be done right, and the city is going to make sure that happens.
Eileen, I hear that you nodded your head, but I don't know if we answered your question. If you answered the question, could you give a thumbs up? If we didn't, go ahead and write back to us a new question. So I hope we did it justice.
Right, I'll just add that this zoning change does not refer to any building designs or what materials would be used. But I can tell you that if it gets to the point where we are actually going to do a building here, the Planning Commission will want, if it's going to be along 89th, that it look like the rest of the building that you see from 89th. Since I've spent a lot of time working with the building itself over the last years, I can tell you that when you look at our church from 89th, it's all brick. The whole thing is brick. When you look at it from back in the garage on the north end, there's about 4 feet of brick on the bottom, and the rest of it is a insulation material that looks like stucco. And so the location of the building will have to adhere to whatever it's close to on the main church building.
Thank you, Dick. I think this is a program clarification from Susie Schultz on our staff. As we have mentioned, when she started working here at Christ Lutheran Church, she was part of the planning of the incorporation of Family Promise in Anoka County. And when Family Promise in Anoka County incorporated, she was the first board president, if I have that correct. And that was part of her responsibilities and duties as our outreach director of Christ Lutheran Church. Susie writes, guest families are not allowed to use alcohol or drugs and are not allowed in the program if they have a criminal record or have active, untreated chemical or mental health issues. So that's a program clarification. Eileen Nicholas checked in. I meant close proximity to a preschool. I'm going to go back to your other question. Would the zoning entail close proximity to a preschool?
Well, I think they'll take that into consideration, but I don't honestly know the answer to that question.
The rezoning is only going to address the use of the property. It's not going to address how a facility would be placed on the property.
Could you say that louder? That was...
Rezoning will address how uses or what uses can be made of this property. It will not address how those uses are placed on the property. That would come through further building review and work with the Planning Commission thereafter.
I'm just going to add that I know from talking to Nancy in the preschool that there is a state requirement that they have so much play area per student, and our preschool meets that criteria, of course. And so obviously a building can't be placed right next to the church there because it would eliminate the play area. So they have adequate play area there now, and the location of another building would have to respect that. Right.
I think based on the programmatic suggestions, the site visit, what we shared on Sunday was that the task force, there's a joint task force from Family Promise and the Christ Lutheran Task Force did a visit to Eau Claire to a static site center, looked at some of the programmatic ways that a static site operates, and Dick placed that around the property in ways that he felt could be presented in an open listening, and then from the open listening that got narrowed to the 2 sites that you have seen as a congregation. So the sites that you have seen so far as a congregation is just to petition for a zoning change, as saying that a program of that scope could fit in these footprints on the property if a zoning change was granted. It's not the detail of bricks, carpet colors, and all that.
That is correct.
You're making Deb's job easy over here. She's not even writing. So you gotta, does anyone have a comment to share, a suggestion to share, a praise to share? We'd love to hear it.
Pastor Kent, maybe Dick could elaborate on the condition of the wall on the south side of the building, since that was a question was raised on Sunday and probably was not adequately answered.
You know, I've spent a lot of time looking at the site here this summer, and as I walked along, trying to look at the church with that concern, which I'll call the not in front of my church concern. And as I looked at the building, I could see some shadows in that wall, and I walked up to it and spent a lot of time face to face looking at it. And the building, that brick wall on the fellowship hall has some problems. There's something wrong there. I believe that there is water getting in, maybe from the roof edge flashing, getting down into the brick, and then when you if you let the brick get wet, then in the spring and the fall, when you have the freeze-thaw cycles that go on and on day after day, what happens is the brick has water soaked into it. Consider it like a really hard sponge. When water freezes, it has to expand, and so it cracks the brick and causes the face of the brick to fall off. So there are several brick on that wall that should be repaired. And so our property committee should take a look at that and see what should be done there.
Thank you. Lori and Frank chimed in. Even though it says Lori and Frank, I have a feeling it's Lori. It's Lori? Is she giving me a thumbs up to that? All right, good. Hi, Lori. If there are preschool-age children in the program, would they be able to attend our early learning center? Our early learning center is open to all. Christ Lutheran Church is open to all. Christ Lutheran Church is living into that. You know, you said earlier, votes. And if this vote doesn't go my way, that could affect my membership. You know, before I came here to Christ Lutheran Church, I'm aware that this congregation took a pretty substantial vote in 2013. And that was a vote to include people that have been for too long excluded from the body of Christ. And we all know that some chose no longer to be members. But I also am impressed with the resiliency of Christ Lutheran Church. I'm impressed with the core of Christ Lutheran Church that continues to say, in the thick and thin, I am with Christ, and I'm going to go with Christ and go with the ways that we continue to change as the church. The way that I've always heard that throughout my life is that I'm Lutheran because we are notoriously a rebellious bunch. Did you know that? We didn't like the Pope, and we let him know. Yep. And we took a vote, and we split from the Catholic Church, Roman Catholic Church. We schism as churches all the time, and it's sad, and it's hard, and it's pain-wrenching. But I'm thankful to be Lutheran today. But the thing that has held me to continue to be Lutheran today is that it seems Lutherans continue to reform, continue to live into what it means to be the church today. And that was what Luther said. In German, it's Sitzenleben, or transliterated to life setting, that the gospel resides in the life setting. And 2013, Christ Lutheran Church said this is the life setting in which to be the church. That we needed to find ways to open our hearts, for our love to be bigger, not contained in a box. And it's always a challenge. It's always heart-wrenching. It's painful. I wasn't even here, and I know that it was painful. But I know Richard and other call committee members know that one of the reasons I am here is because you took that vote. If you had not voted to allow people of all types to Christ Lutheran Church, I wouldn't have said that would be a church that I would want to lead. I probably wouldn't have considered accepting a call to Christ Lutheran Church. So I do know that the Learning Center is open to all children. How we developed a deeper relationship with Family Promise, if there were families that were in a Family Promise program and its static site were here at Christ Lutheran Church, could that broaden and deepen our relationship into our Learning Center? I would think so. I would hope that as a congregation our hearts are open to that and we'd look into that.
Yeah, I'm pretty impressed with this congregation. It's kind of why we're here. These people want a lot of facts. They want answers, and they want to be able to speak their mind and know that they can do that, and they're welcome to do that. We're not all going to agree on everything, and so I don't think we should be concerned about the negative comments that I'm going to call them negative comments about the idea of doing this. I think we should get those out in the open, and we should talk about them as much as we possibly can.
Some of you know one of my favorite children's book is Old Turtle. I'm going to get thrown off the stage in about 2 seconds, but the character Old Turtle, when there's this large argument in the world, has never really spoken before. And Old Turtle says, "Stop." And he invites those who are arguing to deeper conversation. One of the things that I have told the man to my far right, your far left, Richard, is that in the 4 years that I've been here, for me, you are Old Turtle. You are amazing because at council meetings, when council has disagreement, you invited us to stop and listen deeply to each other. And when the conversation came to Christ Lutheran about Family Promise, you said, "I'm off of council. I would like to be on this task force." I continue to admire both the faith and courage of Richard, but I also completely admire his Old Turtle ways, which reminds us that we're the body of Christ together, and we should be bound together in Christ. So I know when we started this, and I was listening to Richard, he said, do you remember what you said? This won't be a unanimous vote. And maybe just share your thoughts on that, because I think that's helpful for all of us to hear.
Well, I think any issue that comes before the congregation is viewed in various ways. We all are invested in this church. We have been here for a long time. We come here for a particular reason because we receive sustenance from this altar, and we see it in various ways. We are not all going to agree, and I don't expect us to, but I do think we come together in terms of believing what Jesus has said and how do we best live out what he has asked us to live. And again, we're not all going to agree, and I think that's fine. That's part of what makes the flavor and adds the vibrancy to this congregation. We like the differences.
I have to say, I love that idea. You know, we're not all going to agree, but just imagine how much wiser we will be if this turns into a real building with brick on it. We will be really, really smart. We'll be looking at all these issues and making sure that they are handled with the absolute best thought for this congregation in mind, from the beginning to the end, and no detail untouched.
Yeah, and I always remind congregations, everyone thinks everything's in secret, everything's confidential, and I'm always reminded that I've probably heard it 3 times already. when you're telling me something confidential. And I've heard all the complaints. I've also heard all the support. There's those that have texted me and said, how do I sign up? How do I help get this off the ground? And there's those that have said, absolutely no way, not a chance. And I'm going to tell all my friends how I feel. I don't know myself. I think there's a lot of questions to be answered. But for myself, we can't answer any of those questions if we don't zone. And I think that's, for me right now, in this decisioning process, is if we go through a zoning process, the city of Blaine may make the decision for us, and we may never take a vote down the road. But if we stopped now, I just wonder how we would think, what if? So that's kind of where I'm at. I would say that it's really important for me to remember that if I vote to move forward with rezoning, I'm not voting for the project to go forward. I'm only voting for rezoning to go forward. And the concept that we need to explore and answer these very valid and helpful questions.
By the way, that reminds me, this is a little bit of a segue here, but how are we going to vote? There are two of us in my home, and we'll want to vote and respect the confidentiality of each other's vote and want everyone's vote to be confidential. How will that happen?
Wow, there are technical gurus that are far better at answering this question than myself. One example could be something like SurveyMonkey. The survey would have a question, and then you vote for or against it, and that is just a web link. So that web link would go out to every member to vote, but it only allows your email to vote once. You can't go back 100 times to the polls and vote. You can only go in and vote once, but you can go in on your web account and vote for the proposal. We also, I'm aware that Zoom, which is what we're on tonight, has been working on a feature that might be in place by September to allow polling or voting right there. So we are looking into the number of ways to allow you to vote. And we might just have to allow you to just, I don't know, drop a paper ballot off. We'll have to figure that out. That is certainly one of the things that council is going to consider. We are meeting on Tuesday, the 18th, that's next Tuesday, and we will set a congregational vote. I know that Richard and Dick and I talked before tonight, and we are going to recommend that being September 20th, Sunday, September 20th. And then that gives us enough time to take all your questions, and some that have come in through emails, some that have come in through phone conversations. All those are valid, and we're going to try and put the frequently asked questions and put as much meat to the answers as possible. But again, we want to remind people we're only going to zoning. We're not going to the color of bricks or what type of carpet. So that's a hard thing in the process right now. But then we would go and be announcing a congregational vote and how that vote would take place. So that is, we are aware of that, and we're working towards it.
Super, good answer.
Thank you. Are there any other chat questions? Chance, I don't know if you noted the total number of participants. Up 23, okay. And seeing that there are not any, I would like to close in prayer. Is that all right? The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Gracious and holy God, we give so much thanks for the way in which you bless Christ Lutheran Church. As we entered the 60th anniversary, we considered how we might embrace our faith, our neighbor, and our future. No one suspected on the horizon COVID-19. Certainly, as we headed into 2020, we heard about it being off in other lands. But we didn't think about here in August what it would mean and how it would change our lives. At a time when the economy is some bit rough, employment can be rocky, we remember those that are making choices between food and rent, or rent and medicine, or medicine and surgery. They are us. We are them. We are God's children, created in God's image, one human family, bound together in the love of Christ with the promise that nothing in all creation can separate us from God's love for us. Amen. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, and we will put this together and get it out to you. And at that, I will invite Chance up. Is there another comment?
It's about the few people on how to because the meeting is supposed to.
Got it. So we will we'll see if we have to maybe hold another listening session in September before the vote, and with the facts, questions, and answers. So thank you so much, and we'll be in touch.